So hello guys, we look again for another deck tech that is for the Pioneer format. And as you can see here, we have another user submitted list, which again got me interested because of the way of this one deck would work out. And of course with the companion of Yorion. As we know, Yorion is basically have this ability wherein it can blink or exile any number of non-land permanents you own and control, and then return those cards to the battlefield at the beginning of the next end step. So how do we make use or take advantage of this ability? We use these cards as listed here with the sagas or enchantments, most of it. And the deck that we call today is Boros Sagas. This is one of the submitted decks, which I think the total cost was around 300 USD. But as you can see here, just basically a red-white mid-range deck that gains the advantage of Yorion, and also using a variance of cards because of Yorion's requirement wherein your starting deck should contain at least 20 cards more than the minimum deck size. If you say that's the minimum deck size, that is 60 plus 20, that is 80 cards on your main deck. So we check on the creature lineup. Since these are mostly enchantments with 39, we use creatures here that are basically gaining advantage of how we put up our enchantments. So we have here Archon of Sun's Grace. This is from Terrace Beyond Death. It is a 4-drop for 3/4 flying lifelink. Pegasus Creatures you control have lifelink and has this ability of Constellation that whenever an enchantment enters the battlefield under your control, you will create a 2/2 white Pegasus creature token with flying. So this 2/2 Pegasus will also become probably your board, or to develop your board that for each enchantment that enters the battlefield, it will produce these tokens. Now with Yorion's ability, that's basically having a huge batch of tokens Pegasus created. And given that we have 4 copies, that we can play out multiple copies of this and have also separate triggers for each of the Archon Constellation ability. Now next, we also have Bone Crusher Giant. This is, I think this is just a typical inclusion in the deck. It's sort of a small spot removal early on because of the stamp ability, but later on becomes also an early threat with a 4/3. It can also take out a clock against your opponents, or maybe trade out against their bigger threats in the early game. So 4 copies of those. We also have 2 copies of Moon Blessed Cleric. This one from Midnight Hunt. So this is has this ability wherein he has his Divine Intervention. When enters the battlefield, you may search your library for an enchantment card, reveal it, and put the card on the top. So any other utility enchantments that you may need in your matchup can be sorted out by this creature. Along with it, we also have 4 copies of Spirited Companion. This is from Kamigawa in Dynasty and was later on reprinted in Jumpstart. So this has ability. This is also an enchantment creature dog that is having card draw source. At the same time, would also trigger some of your enchantment abilities, such as that of Archon of Sun's Grace Constellation ability. And last but not the least, for our creature lineup, we have Starfield Mystic. This is from N20. This is 2 to cast 2/2. Enchantment spells you cast cost 1 less to cast. Whenever enchantment you control enters, put in the graveyard from the battlefield, we put a counter on Starfield Mystic. So basically, this is just not only a utility creature, but also becomes a threat later on as more enchantments is placed in your graveyard, and having this one +1 counters for each of those cards that are being triggered. Now for the enchantment lineup, we have a lot of cards, but we will just go with the category or categorize each of them by support. Let's go first with the pseudo spot removal. We have Baffling End. So this one you're familiar also. Exile opponent controls rated mana cost 0 or less. Then if it leaves the battlefield, the opponent will create a 3/3 dinosaur creature token with trample. Next, we have the 4 copies of Chain to the Rocks. This is also a generic card block in Teros, which can only enchant a mountain you control, but you can basically exile a target creature you control until the Chain to the Rocks leaves the battlefield. For only 1 mana, you just need a mountain to enchant, and since this deck is already a Boros or a red-white setup, there's no really difficulty in enchanting any mountain that is needed. Then we also have a few support. For spot removal, also one copy of temporary lockdown for any aggro deck that has mostly those non-land permanents has mana value 2 or less. And we also have Elder Dragon Boar. This is also a utility creature. I mean, utility saga wherein you can have two damage to each creature and its opponent, or you can have to read ahead to go with the 4/4 red dragon creature token with flying. So also with the support cards, you can also consider Akron War as a support card at the same time. Gain control of target creature that may be relevant in your matchup, and also have this ability on the third saga wherein each top creature deals damage to itself equal to its power. So this is also a good removal per se. At the same time, a saga that can be sought by the ability of Moon Blessed Cleric, and also those you trigger with Archon of Sun's Grace. So the rest would just really be some of the card draw or other cards that may give you mana fix or hand fix. For example, we have Bitter Union. This enters the battlefield, discard a card, you draw 2 cards, and then you may pay 1, sacrifice this 1 to have your creatures to control haste. Don't think this would be really necessary in some situations, but the good thing is that you can just basically discard your extra lands to draw 2 cards in this process. Also with this, we also have the famous Fable of the Mirror Breaker, wherein it's also providing you with mana ramp with the Goblin Shaman, card draws with discard effects, and also have shenanigans with the Reflection of Kikijiki on the back end. And also we have an option also to go with Elspeth, Conquer's Death. So this one is a 5 to cast utility card that can also exile on target permanent with converted mana cost 3 or greater, and at the same time tax out your opponent's counter spells or non-creature spells until your next turn, and then you may also return a creature or planeswalker card from your graveyard to the battlefield and put a personal sound counter or loyalty counter in it. So for copies of that card, we also have the option to go with the usual Fire Invention shenanigans, wherein you can just basically play out your free cards for mana cost that is equal to the or less than to the number of lands you control. So this is also your option here because you're just basically going wide with this deck, just playing out the card advantage after a card advantage with your enchantments or sagas, and you can also use Fire Invention to go through that. So basically casting 2 cards, 2 huge saga cards each turn is basically backbreaker for most of your opponents that can handle. Along with it, we have several one-ups here. Example, Massive Landslide can also become a good source to manifest or put up threats for 2/2 face-down creatures. Showdown the Skulls. This one is also a card draw per se because of exiling the top 4 cards library, and then you may play those cards and then casting a spell this turn, putting counter on target creature you control. We also have Starfield Mystic. This is from Magic Origins. I think this one has ability that you may return target enchantment card from your graveyard to battlefield. So those sagas that has expired are basically can be brought back by this ability. And as a bonus, that as long as you control 5 more enchantments, each other than aura enchantment you control becomes a creature in addition to its other types and has a base power and toughness equal to the verted mana cost. So basically, it's a enchantment March of the Machines, and have those sagas being creatures to attack out to your opponent. And also, last but not the least, are the utility cards. By searching your mana source, we have Birth of Abilities. You can search for a basic plains card. You can also create a 0/4 token to block out any aggro and you gain 2 life. And also Restoration of Iganju. This one from Neon Dynasty is also a good source to pull out your plains. And also discard a card and return a target permanent card with mana value or less, or discarding your extra lands would basically ramp you up. And having a 3/4 attacker and blocker vigilance at the same time. And of course, our instant, the only instant in this deck is Valakot's Awakening, which also can be turned into a land with Stoneforge. Its ability is put any number of cards from your hand at the bottom of your library, then draw that many cards plus 1. So in any instance that your card draw or hand would not be really efficient in that matchup, or in any situation against that is disadvantageous against your opponent, you can use this card to basically shuffle up and draw that many cards to basically replace or replenish your hand. And for the landslide up, we just have being the basics, some castle to put out the mana, the 1/1 tokens, mana fix with cliff top retreats. Also, we have Fable Passage to search out fetch for the basic lands, and yet Mist Guardian also some cycling effects. But the lineups is basically there. The basics are just Sundown Pass, Sacred Foundries, some Needle Spires for a manland if needed, and other green and white cards that is basically supporting also the mountain for that of Chain to the Rocks. So the average mana cost of the deck, that's about, surprisingly, that's 2.8 or about 3. That's basically can be functional by turn 3 or turn 4. But with this setup, we make sure that your mana issues would be answered by having these cards to fetch out your planes. So we have basically have 5 basic planes here in the deck. And of course, we can curve out later on with the Archon and put out your sagas or enchantments to making sure that you can basically develop your board and the setup. Color distribution, red producers are 23, white with 24. And it's basically more of white with 45 and red with 29 on the setup. And the rest are just basically tokens. We have basically a lot of tokens here. We have a dragon token, dinosaur, copy, goblin shaman, human. This is one from the castle, I think. Pegasus token. This is from the Archon, spirit, and treasure, and wall for the rest of this deck. So if you're going to go with the Yorion Sky Nomad Companion, I'd suggest we go with this Boros Sagas and Pioneer. And if you really tested this one, that's mean the cost is 432. If you already tested this one in Arena or in MTG Online, just let me know if what would be your observations of the deck on how it turned out, how the curves are set up, and what is other advantages and disadvantages maybe. Just comment them down below in the comment box of this video. So that's about it, guys. Thank you for checking this Boros Sagas Yorion Companion for Pioneer. Until the next deck tech video and other MTG stuff, just like and subscribe. Make sure notifications are turned on for instant updates for the next video upload. Thank you for checking on this video, guys, and until the next time, see ya.